delegation from the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, and Owen Murphy, who's the head of the Election Observation Mission from the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. We will have time after the presentation of the statement for questions from the media, but in the meantime, please, Mr. Khandanyan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon to attend this press conference. My name is Sarkis Khandanyan, and I'm a member of the Parliament of Armenia. I serve as the head of the Armenian delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and as a chair of its General Committee on Democracy, Human Rights and Today in my capacity as special coordinator and leader of the OSCE short-term observer mission to the 2026 parliamentary elections in Hungary. I would like to warmly thank my colleagues present here, Owen Murphy, leading the OSCE ODIHR mission, Pablo Ispan, heading the delegation from the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and my dear colleague Rupa Hook, heading the delegation of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, for a constructive and fruitful cooperation during this mission. Our International Election Observation Mission was truly a joint effort and comprehensive undertaking. The high number of international observers present on occasion of these elections testifies to the strong support of the international community to Hungary and its people. Indeed, our joint mission was composed of 389 observers from 47 countries deployed throughout the country on election day, including 218 OSCE ODIHR observers and experts, 134 parliamentary observers from the OSCE PA, and 37 from PACE. I would like to thank everyone who was present on the ground observing these important elections, both yesterday, but also those who have been conducting a long-term and qualitative monitoring since the start of the election process. Our joint report on the elections is based on our observers' election day assessments combined together, as well as on the long-term and qualitative monitoring performed by the ODIHR. We will now present to you the main conclusions and findings of our joint international election observation mission. Our complete statement will be available to you shortly. The 12th April parliamentary elections in Hungary saw active citizen engagement with record voter turnout and genuine choice, but there was no level playing field, with the ruling party benefiting from systemic advantages that blurred the line between state and party. The election administration managed the preparations efficiently and professionally. While the campaign was marred by the divisive and fear-mongering rhetoric on the part of the ruling party, including unsubstantiated claims of foreign interference advanced by the government, candidates were able to campaign freely. The extensive misuse of public office, administrative resources, and government messaging, a clear bias in monitored media and news coverage in favor of the ruling party, and serious shortcomings in the regulation of campaign finance further undermined equality of opportunities among contestants. Additionally, insufficient efforts by the authorities to protect the online space and counter disinformation reinforced the atmosphere of deep polarization and undermined public confidence. Shortcomings in the handling of election disputes, together with the limited effectiveness of legal remedies, weakened accountability. The International Election Observation Mission positively assessed all stages of the election day process in the overwhelming majority of polling stations observed, despite some procedural shortcomings. This is the overall picture. As special coordinator and leader of all OSCE short-term observers, I would like to commend the diligent work of our observers yesterday in polling stations throughout the country. Our presence in very high numbers is a reflection of the importance of these highly anticipated elections. But most importantly, I would like to commend the Hungarian voters for their strong commitment to democracy and yesterday historic record high turnout. I was impressed by the spirited citizen engagement we have witnessed in these elections. It is a testament to the voters that the ruling party's divisive and inflammatory rhetoric and misuse of public office did not stop them voting in record high numbers yesterday. This was a hard-fought campaign, and while the ruling party leveraged government powers to tip the scales in advantage, it remained competitive. Indeed, the electoral legal framework falls short of a number of international standards for democratic elections. Furthermore, the election authorities, the judiciary, and the public media systemically lack impartiality. The misuse of public office and administrative resources in the campaign is not prohibited by law, and of particular concern, this absence was largely taken advantage of by the ruling party. But despite this framework, the campaign was highly active, visible, and competitive. The political environment was deeply polarized, but voters could make a choice between different options, and candidates could campaign freely. The election authorities managed the technical preparation of these elections professionally and efficiently. This was further reflected on election day, as our observers positively assessed all stages of the election process in the majority of the 1,431 polling stations visited. I would like to take a moment to applaud the women and men of this country who in big numbers administered the elections in polling stations yesterday and contributed to carrying out the country's democratic effort. I would like to thank the authorities of Hungary and the numerous stakeholders we have met and exchanged with for their cooperation during this mission. I would also like to share my heartfelt gratitude to the people of this country who offered a very warm welcome to our observers on election day. Now I would like to pass the floor to my colleagues and partners so they may also share their assessments and impressions with you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Hispan, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a great day for Europe. My name is Pablo Hispan. As head of the delegation of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, allow me to share our findings on yesterday's parliamentary elections in Hungary. Our delegation, composed of 37 members from 21 European countries and members of the Venice Commission, observed the vote in and around Budapest, Debrecen, Pécs, Győr, Eger, Miskolc, and other locations. Let me start by saying congratulations to the people of Hungary, who expressed a clear and unequivocal choice. The exceptionally higher voter turnout demonstrates that fear-mongering, propaganda, and intimidation cannot suppress the democratic will of the people. While we welcome this outcome and acknowledge that elections day itself was calm and well run, we must not forget the unfair conditions that preceded, because democratic elections are not only what's happened the day of the elections. These elections were pivotal not only for Hungary, but for Europe as a whole, in a context of heightened geopolitical tensions following the Russian Federation war of aggression against Ukraine, growing transatlantic uncertainty, and an extreme populist challenge to liberal democratic values. In this highly charged setting, the campaign that was under a state of danger from 2020, and in an environment that was marked by hyperpolarization, divisive rhetoric, and structural imbalance. The blurring of state and party, the massive use of state resources in favor of one side, a serious concern about distorted information space undermine the fairness of the context. Aggressive campaign messaging, including anti-Ukraine and anti-European Union institutions propaganda, a crude war or peace narrative, and concerns over foreign malign interference further weaken the conditions for informed voter choice. The issue of out-of-country voting deserves our particular attention. Equal suffrage must mean equal suffrage for all citizens. Arrangements that treat voters differently depending on where and how they vote, especially though problematic postal voting arrangements, raise serious concern that must now be addressed. During our observation, we also note cases in which some voters appear to have been placed on minority lists without their knowledge and were therefore unable to participate in the vote for party lists. The legal framework should be changed. In 2022, the European Court of Human Rights found a violation of the right to vote in conjunction with the right to non-discrimination. The concerns identified by the Court now need to be fully addressed. The powerful democratic response yesterday also reflects the indispensable role played by the civil society and the independent media in preserving scrutiny, accountability, and the conditions for political change. The Hungarian people have expressed their will. Peter Magyar and TISA have a clear mandate now to turn the page, which carries a great responsibility to honor the trust placed in them by the Hungarian people and strengthen rule of law, balance of powers, and democracy. We expected that the new government and parliament to address the problems we observed and rebuild trust in the country's democratic governance and its place within the European family of democratic nations. We hope, when we return to Hungary next time, we will find a country where the role of the government, the media environment, and the conditions for political competitions are fundamentally different and fully in line with democratic standards. Within the framework of the monitoring procedure of the Parliamentary Assembly, we will resume our dialogue with the new Hungarian authorities and reiterate our call for a complete overhaul of the electoral legislation in line with our 2025 resolution. The Council of Europe's observers were present because Hungary is currently under monitoring. We sincerely hope that the next government will address their outstanding concerns so that in the future our presence as observers will no longer be necessary, at least in the current form. And let me conclude as I began. Today is a great day for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hispan. And now, please, Ms. Hoek.
Thanks ever so much, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be here today, and I recognize people in this room from across the past couple of days. I'm going to miss you, but it's been a really rewarding mission that we've all engaged in. So as mentioned, I'm a Member of Parliament from the UK. I represent a seat in suburban West London, and I have been heading up the delegation of parliamentarians for the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, one European body we're still in the UK. And altogether, if you count them up, we had 134 parliamentary observers join us from 38 different nation states. And of course, I echo the comments of my good friend Sargis, and I want to associate myself completely with the remarks he made of our assessment of this exercise. This was an unusually popular election mission. I've done, I think, a dozen of them myself all over the place, but I think this is the second biggest one I've served in after the US because of all the implications of the results. This huge engagement that we've seen in terms of participation, and also reflected in the very high turnout figures that we've seen from yesterday, indicate the massive interest and solidarity with Hungarians from elected MPs like myself from all over the OSCE vast region, from Vancouver to Vladivostok, as we say. So clearly, we weren't the only ones interested in the election. Sargis and I did a press conference yesterday at 10 a.m., and there were all sorts of international broadcasters. For a small country with an electorate the size of London, my home city, I think it does punch above its weight for a landlocked small country. A lot of interest. The eyes of the world, it felt, were on this election. And the turnout, I mean, wow, what an impressive turnout. The seat I represent traditionally gets 75% that's seen as high. This was way in excess of that. Last election we had, I think, 60%. We had a smaller one last time in my area. But getting on for, I think, are we allowed to say 80? 79.8%, very high turnout figures, really, really impressive. Such a strong message of interest and political messaging. And we shouldn't take this for granted. And we did find somewhat problematic some of the things that Pablo was saying as well. that sometimes these systems look good on paper. In reality, the execution of them can be a bit different. We found that there was a plurality of voices, but sometimes the official media, the debate was somewhat lacking. And for example, there are no candidate debates. I think that's a standard thing in many countries we know, particularly in the US. So I mean, to me, it's abundantly clear that the public service media's coverage was slanted, significantly tilted in favor of the government and the ruling party, the now outgoing government. Sargis and I went to see them as well when we were here in March. I mean, admittedly, there was minutes distributed to every party. We got those assurances. But failure of the public media to provide balanced information is disturbing. I understand that while we've been here, there was a huge concert on Friday night, for example, with a lot of bands. I think every pop star you've ever heard of from Hungary was there, but it wasn't reported. I don't know, this is what I'm being told on the official channels. It was more in the unofficial media. So there is a plurality of media, it is there, but if you just turn on the TV channels of the free ones, you won't get the full range. This is what we were told in some of our briefings as well. But anyway, look, this is past. Let's be positive. Despite the overall restrictive media that accompanied this campaign, this massive engagement of voters who turned out yesterday is all the more impressive and remarkable. And I would say the campaign was competitive. It was certainly a spirited fight that took place. There was a plurality of voices. We can see outside even today, the posters are still there. But it feels like the very negative messaging on Ukraine and the European Union framed it as a sort of scaremongering national security lens. That dominated the discourse. It feels almost that there were domestic issues concentrated on by the opposition who now have won, but the then ruling government went more for this scary security narrative. I mean, anyone coming in from the airport, and I noticed that last month when I was here for the initial visit, will have noticed the huge numbers of posters of Zelensky, and you're thinking, hang on, is he a candidate in this election? What's going on? And also like Ursula von der Leyen, which actually shows a sophisticated electorate if they know who these figures are. I think not everyone in every country would know these characters, but also rather crude messaging in such a negative way, I feel. But yeah, I think the conclusion is the people power of that massive turnout and massive turnaround, because who'd have thought a government that at the beginning of this year everyone was saying is so entrenched, it's such a tilted, unlevel playing field, it's going to be hard. It happened anyway. So, you know, when these forces become unstoppable, you know, maybe no one's really able to stop them. A couple of observations from yesterday, and then I will shut up. I mean, astonishing to see at 7 a.m. our team noticed that there's already a line there, first thing in the morning, 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Sorry, 6 a.m., what am I saying? Before 6 a.m. And, you know, it was a long day. As I say, we did the press conference at 10. We crisscrossed around doing various polling stations, slightly outside Budapest and, as well. So we didn't just stay in the city centre. Right at the end, we were back nearby for our final polling station in Buda County, where there was a woman at 7 o'clock running to get in there before they sealed the doors. She was able to cast her vote. We met people of all ages. In many cases, people took the kids as a festive event, bring the whole family, little ones. I even spoke to a 95-year-old. So, yeah, what a day. So from the opening to the counting, the dedication of everyone involved was clear to see, and especially those poll workers. I mean, what a long stint they put in serving the purpose of democracy. So the findings and recommendations are there for you to pore over, and I hope they can be taken forward constructively by the new government, all the relevant stakeholders, and we wish them well in their effort. And also, I don't know if any of the newly elected members of the Hungarian parliament are watching, because it's a huge changing of the guard that's taken place. How exciting. I've done 4 terms. I'm in my term number 4. as a UK Member of Parliament. But welcome to all the new MPs, wherever they are. Probably maybe a bit tired after yesterday. I look forward to welcoming them to future OSCE Parliamentary Assembly events. We warmly welcome them and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hook. And now, please, Mr. Murphy.
Great, thank you, Tom. And thank you all for coming today. You're all very welcome. The OSCE's Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, or ODIHR, has had an election observation mission in Hungary since the first week of the campaign back in February. Our core team has been based here in Budapest with long-term observers deployed across the country since the 7th of March, and members of the core team have also made visits to different regions of the country as part of our work. My sincere thanks to the people of Hungary for their warm welcome and their hospitality. I'd like to reiterate what the Special Coordinator and my colleagues have said here today. The 12th of April parliamentary elections saw active citizen engagement with record voter turnout and genuine choice, but there was no level playing field, with the ruling party benefiting from systemic advantages that blurred the line between the state and party. The ODIHR mission attended all public sessions of the National Election Commission, as well as sessions of constituency election commissions across the country. The technical preparations of the elections were administered efficiently and professionally. NEC sessions were public and decisions were published in a timely manner, contributing to transparency. We have had 18 long-term observers deployed across the country since the 7th of March, as I said, attending more than 42 campaign events, as well as observing other traditional campaign activities. The campaign was competitive, it was active, it was highly visible, both online and across the country. Voters were offered multiple political options and candidates were able to campaign freely. But there was no level playing field, to make this point again and to make it clearly. The lack of an explicit prohibition against the misuse of public office and administrative resources for campaign purposes fails to ensure a fair basis for contestants. Ruling party messaging was echoed in government information campaigns and by state bodies and state-owned enterprises. Voters' personal data was misused for campaign purposes. And public service media did not provide a balanced picture of contestants and campaign issues. This undermined equality of opportunity for the contestants in this campaign. The ruling party's messaging on Ukraine and on the EU institutions was divisive, as has been said. More than this, though, the government alleged interference by the EU institutions and Ukraine without presenting evidence to the public. Meanwhile, other claims of foreign interference were dismissed as disinformation. This impacted public confidence and further reinforced the political divide in the country. We also observed campaigning on social networks, which is effectively unregulated by domestic legislation. There was legal uncertainty and a lack of clarity over institutional responsibility for oversight of online campaigning. The coordination between the authorities was inadequate. And furthermore, the lack of substantive communication with the public, together with an absence of action on complaints about the online campaign, reduced the effectiveness of the state's overall response in protecting the online space from potential misuse. Coming to campaign finance, the removal of spending limits in the campaign departs from international standards and further distorts the level playing field, again in favor of the ruling party. Public funding constitutes a significant share of parliamentary group financing, and this public funding, which can be used in campaigns, was recently substantially increased, contributing to an unlevel playing field. And returning to the issue of the media, between the 9th of March and up till Election Day, we conducted quantitative and qualitative monitoring of 6 TV stations and 6 online media outlets, including public media. This monitoring found a clear bias in favor of government and the ruling party, both in public service broadcasting as well as in several private broadcasters. Public service media did not provide a balanced picture of contestants and campaign issues. During the campaign, the media regulator failed to address concerns related to balanced and accurate campaign coverage. And furthermore, independent journalism is at a clear structural disadvantage in Hungary when compared to the much larger and better resourced pro-government media sector. These entrenched systemic weaknesses limited pluralistic public debate, critical journalism, as well as voters' access to comprehensive information. Now, on election day, we observed all stages of the election day process, and in the overwhelming majority of polling stations observed, we made a positive assessment with only some procedural shortcomings. As part of one joint effort from this international election observation mission, more than 389 short-term observers were deployed across election day, as the special coordinator has said. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the heads of the parliamentary delegations that I've had the pleasure to work with, Rupa Hook of the OSCE's PA and Pablo Hispan of PACE, both for their support and for their leadership. In particular, I would like to recognize the special coordinator, Sarkis Kandanian, for his leadership of this IEOM. Thank you. The OSCE's Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights will remain in Hungary to follow any election-related complaints and appeals. ODIHR will continue working with the national authorities after the election process has concluded, including by publishing a final report which will contain recommendations to improve the process for future elections. I'd like to sincerely thank those members of our observation team who were recruited locally, who are citizens of Hungary, and who played a crucial role in our mission across the country. I want to thank them for their dedication and for their professionalism. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the host authorities for their full cooperation throughout our deployment, in particular the National Election Commission, the National Election Office, and the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. And my thanks to the interpreters for their assistance today, and to all of you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. As I mentioned earlier, we will now have time for questions from journalists. I'll ask you, please, if you have a question, to raise your hand. We'll have a microphone brought to you. Before you ask your question, however, I'd just like to ask, please, if you could give your name and the media outlet you represent. Have we explained everything that well? It appears. Here, if you could, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Pál Kovács from Telex, Hungary. My question is, OSCE has been observing elections in Hungary before, and what would you say is the biggest difference this time in terms of how this election process went? If you had to name one notable difference in terms of the whole process, what would you name? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. We're an independent international election observation mission, and so every time we deploy to observe an election, we treat that election as a unique event. So we don't compare elections between countries, and we don't compare them within the country either. But for anyone who might have read our 2022 report, our final report, it contained a number of recommendations on how the electoral process and the electoral laws in this country could be brought closer to OSCE commitments and to international standards for democratic elections. As we note in the document being published today, a number of those recommendations remain unaddressed. A number of shortcomings have been highlighted by the speakers beside me, but one particular recommendation which I think is worth bringing to attention is that there are a number of omissions and key provisions that in the electoral legal framework that fall short of these OSCE commitments when it comes to international standards for democratic elections. So recent amendments that were made in legislation prior to the election did not address previous recommendations. And most of all, there is no explicit provision against misuse of public office and administrative resources for campaign purposes. So when we talk about there being no level playing field, when we talk about the unfair advantages for contestants in this campaign, when we outline each of the issues that we have in relation to the overlap between government messaging and party messaging, shortcomings in the legal framework when it comes to campaign finance, changes in the public subsidization of political parties in parliament, which can then be spent in the campaign, bias in the public media. All of those areas have been addressed before in previous ODIHR recommendations. And after we've finished our work here, we'll stay on in the country to continue to monitor the post-electoral developments. In some months' time, we'll publish a final report. And in that final report, we'll have a number of recommendations, including priority recommendations. And as I said in my statement, this election observation mission will conclude, and we will publish our report and do our work. But the OSCE's ODIHR in Warsaw remains at the disposal of the authorities to work with them should they look to implement the recommendations that we have made following the selection process. Thank you.
My name is Peter Samo with Capital Intelligence Group CI Ukraine. On your last point, can we expect a very detailed report on campaign finance, who paid what to whom and how in your end report? Or are you confident you can get that, or is that something you don't think you'll be able to publish?
Well, thank you very much for that question. So, as the special coordinator said, we're publishing a very detailed report today, 24 pages. Which you'll have with you very shortly. And in that report, we do speak in detail to the area of campaign finance when it comes to elections. We had a number of meetings with the relevant stakeholders when it comes to oversight of the campaign finance space in the country. We also met with contestants in the campaign to get their views as well. And what we point out in the report is that there are significant gaps in the law, limited oversight in the law as well, and weakened transparency when it comes to actually understanding, seeing, having a proper account of how much money is being spent and by whom in the process of the campaign. There are no spending limits, as I said, which is a departure from international standards. Public funding, as I said, was increased for parliamentary groups in the years prior to the election. That public funding can be spent on the campaign. So therefore, if you have a larger parliamentary group, you're at a much greater advantage. And all of these different measures that we outline in the report have favoured the ruling party. And in addition, third-party campaigning is not explicitly regulated. So we speak to each of these areas on campaign finance in our report. And when we come to our final report, we may contain recommendations on as to how the campaign finance oversight and legislation can be brought closer to OSCE commitments.
For example, there's one obvious example is Gideon Richter and Moll have given something like $1.8 billion in what can only be considered as campaign finance to one political party. Those are two listed companies. They're international EU companies. Is that something you name? Because without names and specifics, it doesn't really reform the system.
Sorry, if I can just interrupt. Actually,
Gideon Richter and the Mall, it's a big scandal here. Everybody knows about it.
I understand that. I'm just saying, I'm sorry, with regard to the questions and with this, the work of the Election Observation Mission is to look at these things, and we've covered them today in the preliminary statement. It also covers, to a degree, the role of the local authorities, the Hungarian authorities, whose responsibility actually it is to look at what you're asking about here. Anyone else? All right, well, again, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, for the questions and for your attention. You can find the preliminary statement that's been presented here today, both on your way out, on the table there, as well as on the websites of our organizations. Otherwise, I wish you all a wonderful rest of the afternoon.